If there's one genre that seems to epitomise all the problems of the big budget AAA games industry, it's sports games. Given that all the big licenses are controlled by one or two of the biggest corporations in the medium, one of which just got bought out by Saudi interests and Jared Kushner of all people, the associated drive for profit above all else has led to such a creatively stagnant ecosystem that it became a meme for a bit there that IGN would just copy-paste their FIFA review from the previous year to match the effort shown in the actual game. Just the most basic representation of the sport, with some 70 quid stat updates every year, and people keep lapping it up. It's cool then that we're starting to see some more messing with the formula recently. Despelote is such a terrific example of using the mechanics of a sport to tell a coming-of-age story centered within a wider national turmoil. Similarly, I remembered last year at Gamescom being led into some wildly swanky hotel suite for a strangely hushed publisher briefing to be shown footage of Rematch by Slowclap, who had previously made the excellent Sifu. And I just thought, it's wild that it took so long to get a sports game like this, representing an actual extant sport made by an action game developer. It seems so simple a concept, but the closest I could really come to anything similar was something like Red Card way back in the day. It got me thinking, when games like Rematch clearly have the potential to capture the zeitgeist and gain major popularity, is this really all that we can do with the beautiful game? This annualized dross? Well, it took just one game, one moment in one recent game to disabuse me of that notion. It's the most novel football game I've ever played, the most I've thought about the mechanics of football in God knows how long. Indeed, the football game I think is better than anything else is this. Welcome to the world of Baby Steps, a game where, far from the silky smooth action of something like EAFC taking control of the best players in the world, you instead maneuver each leg of a lone mid-30s manchild, individually, slowly and awkwardly, trying and failing to score a goal here, on this barren football pitch in the middle of nowhere. Nate, the manchild in question, has feet that constantly want to move on top of the ball rather than kick it. After the halfway point, the pitch starts to incline. Rocks impede your path. That slight incline becomes your own personal hell as the ball begins slowly but surely rolling away from the goal with every kick, back to your starting point. With every kick then, the urgency increases and your moves become similarly erratic in response, causing this big lump to fall all over the place, moaning away about how hard he's got it the whole time. And when you finally get the ball into that net, after all that time and effort, it took me literally 20 minutes, your reward is nothing. No cutscene, no achievement, just a weak yay from our pajamaed protagonist. It's awful, and it's brilliant. And crucially, it's a game that isn't even about football. Not really, unless... See, Baby Steps is, alongside Gabe Cuzillo and Maxi Boch, developed by none other than Bennett Foddy of Getting Over It infamy, and it would not be the first sports game the Australian designer has produced. Quop, what would constitute many people's first exposure to his work back in the day, similarly took an activity that many would consider the height of elegance, strength and athleticism, competitors training for their entire lives to maximize the efficiency of every muscle utilized, and turned it into a complete clown show of flailing limbs and zero progress. Here though, there exists something that goes beyond mere comedy, seeing this game of football represent the adaptability that forms a key part of Baby Steps' narrative for me, the growth of Nate, its protagonist. Let's get things straight right from the off. This dude is a complete dafty, especially when you first meet him. He's 35 years old, motionless on a grooved sofa that's entirely too big for his cramped room, bong in clear view, watching anime while his parents argue about what they're going to do with such a worthless lump. He inexplicably vanishes into a completely alien world where he's confronted with his complete inability to interact with others. He's desperate for the bathroom, but can barely ask where one might be. He wants to go home, but he also wants everyone to go away. The first thing he does in this world is topple on his face, a sign of things to come perhaps. And yet, you move him forward. For all the game's seeming indifference towards his presence, there is a mechanical incentive in ensuring that this dweeb endures this predicament in one piece. You simply want to see what this world has to offer, and in order to do that, you have to get this guy to walk step by excruciating step. You will guide him across unbelievably treacherous terrain and mountains and force him into wild situations with eccentric but mostly well-meaning natives. You want him to succeed, to move, to go, to progress through life rather than simply vegetate where he's standing. It's as true of the strange environment Nate finds himself in as it is the dungeon in which he previously decayed. What would be the point in letting that happen when there's this whole preposterous world to see out there? The game gives you about as literal a mechanical representation of this conundrum as possible. You feel bad for the guy, you want to help him. But as you gradually get used to Nate's lumbering rhythm and gain a kind of mechanical symbiosis with him, something interesting happens. Where just moving in a straight line once felt like such a Herculean task, you begin to discover a kind of twisted mechanical precision at work. Indeed, part of the comedy for me is that Nate so frequently matches those moments of pathetic oafishness with displays of almost inexplicably ballet-esque balance and poise. And so, simply reaching the top of that mountain, getting Nate back to his world, slowly moves to the back of your mind in favour of uncovering the secrets in this one. You, and by extension Nate, go from trying to get through simple conversations to clambering through entirely optional, actually dangerous places despite being told there's nothing to be found at the top. You see a clear path and you deviate from it to see what's off to the side. The cave you left behind rots away with every campsite discovered. You don't need it anymore. Which finally brings us onto the football part of this equation, a completely optional discovery I quite literally fell into, hidden well behind a mysterious box fortress that itself took a great deal of navigating. Each part of this journey ends up representing the video game equivalent of Bart activating the super fun happy slide. You know you really shouldn't, but when are you gonna be there again? Well equipped with the knowledge that there will probably be nothing at the end of it, Nate being the least sporty person imaginable, and through 20 minutes of absolutely relentless trial and error, as that damn incline becomes a greater challenge than the literal mountain before you, Nate prevails. That yay might sound weak, but it's as legitimately triumphant as Nate has been up to that point. He's saying it to no one but himself. As that ball rolls away, one must indeed imagine Nate happy. Through this most protracted game of football ever, Nate is imagining a world outside of what he has known and been imprisoned within his whole life. He is actively seeking it out. And that is kind of beautiful. But alongside this journey that this football game represents for Nate, it also speaks to the ability to present something legitimately novel within the sport itself. Indeed, despite Nate's age, there's a childlike innocence captured here that really spoke to me personally. You know, I remember going down to a pitch just like this one. In fact, it's where I played some of the most football I ever played growing up. When I think of playing football, that pitch is what comes to mind. Uneven, borderline cratered, covered in puddles and patchy grass, wet from the bleak Scottish skies above. You wouldn't think about it, but you were playing football with obstacles in the way, things to avoid, inclines that would leave both sides complaining about unfair advantage. For some reason, I'd consistently get put in goal, even though I would always jump out of the way whenever the ball flew towards me, to avoid the pain accompanying that slam. Those sense memories are almost what I associate most closely with football. Much like that pitch, whenever I think about the sensation of being winded, I'm immediately transported back to when I was 9 years old, taking a shot full force to the gut off of the popular kid, me trying and failing to hold back tears and getting laughed at by the great sporting phenom and all his tag-along pals. I would go down to the pitch on my own or with my brother and dad to practice dribbling and controlling the ball, getting used to every minute element of how it moved, how I would maneuver in response. In short, just like Nate, albeit as an actual child and not a 35-year-old man, I got scared and anxious about football, among many, many other things. I got curious about it, about every minuscule element of it, thinking about and getting overwhelmed by every possible variable at play. All those things that ostensibly make the sport as fascinating to so many as it clearly is. And all those things that you no longer have to think about when your mechanical engagement amounts to hold stick to run along flat surface and press button to shoot. All this to say, while I was decades younger than Nate when all of this was happening, I can relate to this experience, even with its decidedly awkward and comedic mechanics. Much like Despelote, Baby Steps pokes at a truth about growing up and making your own way through the world that resonated with me, and it did so through a type of game that many see as so mechanically rigid and stagnant. Look, my point with all of this is not that Baby Steps is as great as we imagine typically great football games to be. To be clear, jokey title aside, it's not a football game. It's just that I'm glad there exist efforts out there, no matter how incidental or unimportant they may have seemed to the devs as they make them, that allow for different visions of what we think we know. And somehow, against all odds, in a world of FIFAs and EAFCs, when it comes to sports games and the potential for really gripping storytelling therein, I'll take Baby Steps any day of the week. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked the video, you can help me out by liking, subscribing, becoming a member, and even typing now, which apparently costs you nothing if that option is available to you. It all helps more than you know. A massive thanks as well to my patrons, who you can see on screen and are all getting access to exclusive, fully produced videos that aren't available here. Your continued support on patreon.com/writingongames is what allows me to keep going with the work I do on this channel, and I seriously cannot express how grateful I am for that. You are all the best. Special thanks go to Ewan Patterson, David Butkus, Brendan Hess, Mason Miller, Alex O'Sullivan, Michael Tritt, Rickety Cricket, Cameron Sinisteros, Charles J. Liu, Allride, Thomas Ife, Luke Shaw, Alistair Dunn, Vitautis Catharsis, Dolly Bowman, Young Condor, Danis Sikauskis, Christopher Faherty, Nicholas Villeneuve, Leah Chinello, Captain Knussbrich, Bryce Snyder, C-Page Mail Limited, David Björk, Timothy Jones, Matthew Grover, Shardfire, Lynn Browning, Dallas Keane, Charlie Kimball, and Charlie Yang. And with that, this has been another episode of Writing on Games. Thank you all so much for watching, stay safe, and I will see you all next time.